You can usually tell when someone is financially stable, but not in the way most people think. It's not about big purchases or expensive choices. In fact, the signs are often found in everyday behavior, and they're easy to overlook unless you know what to pay attention to. People who are financially ahead don't waste energy trying to prove it. They don't live to impress others. They focus on structure, consistency, and control. You'll see it in how they make spending decisions, how they manage time, and how they think about the future. Their habits aren't loud, but they're effective, and they reveal a mindset that's been built carefully over time. Here are subtle choices that tell someone is wealthy. One of the clearest signs is how someone handles their day-to-day spending. People with real financial stability don't chase every discount or jump at every sale. They buy based on plans, not moods. They know their fixed monthly costs and stick to a simple budget that works. They don't need to show it to anyone. It's not about cutting out everything. It's about having a system. They spend on what matters and skip what doesn't. You might see them using something old, not because they can't afford new, but because the old one still works and doesn't need replacing. They also tend to use money in a way that avoids waste. When they do spend, they think about how long something will be useful. That might mean buying a more durable item up front instead of replacing a cheap one over and over. They don't spend impulsively. They wait, they research, they compare. And over time, this pattern saves them more money than chasing short-term deals ever could. Another sign is how they manage their time. People who are financially stable are careful about where their time goes. They don't commit to every plan or take on too many tasks. They know how to say no without making a scene. Their schedules aren't packed just to stay busy. They create space in their days so they can think clearly, take care of themselves, and make better decisions. It's not because they're less busy. It's because they've built a life where they're not always reacting. You'll also notice that they don't constantly change their lifestyle just because they've had a good month or earned a bonus. Someone who understands money doesn't immediately upgrade their phone, car, or home every time they can afford to. Instead, they keep their life steady. They may still cook most of their meals. They may stay in a modest home, not because they're cutting corners, but because they've already figured out what works. They don't tie up their money in things that will lose value fast. They care more about stability than appearance. They plan ahead. That's one of the biggest differences. When prices go up or income slows down, they don't panic. Not because they like those situations, but because they've prepared. They set aside money during the better times. They avoid making big decisions during emotional moments. They think carefully and take small steps early so they don't have to make big moves later. This habit of preparation is one of the clearest signals that someone has control over their finances. Many financially stable people also avoid taking on debt just to feel better in the short term. They understand that it might feel good to buy something new or big. They also know the stress that can come from repayments. So instead of borrowing for temporary rewards, they save. Even if it takes longer, they'd rather wait and own something fully than rush and regret it later. It's a calm, patient approach to spending that builds trust in themselves over time. Another clue is how they make financial decisions. You'll rarely see someone with long-term financial stability chasing the newest trend or latest scheme. They usually stick to simple strategies, earning steadily, spending less than they make, and investing consistently. They don't rush to double their money overnight. They focus on systems that are proven, even if they seem boring to others. They know that financial success doesn't require being the smartest. It just requires staying consistent. They also tend to limit the number of accounts, tools, or apps they use to manage money. Their systems are clean and simple. They can tell you how much they earn, how much they spend, and what they're working toward, all without confusion. This type of clarity doesn't come from being perfect. It comes from paying attention over time and removing things that don't work. That's something most people overlook. Another habit is how they handle personal energy. People with strong financial habits don't give their time or focus to everything. They're careful about what they take on, and they don't stretch themselves thin to keep others happy. If something drains their time or focus with no real benefit, they step back. They know that managing money isn't just about numbers, it's also about staying focused and clear-headed. Because you can't make good decisions when you're constantly distracted or exhausted. You'll often see that these people are also very deliberate about who they spend time with. Not because they're trying to isolate themselves, but because they understand how much your environment shapes your habits. If their friends or family pressure them into constant spending, they create space. If someone respects boundaries and shares similar goals, they spend more time with them. It's not about cutting people off, and it's about choosing peace and shared values. Their conversations are also different. They're not always talking about the next big thing to buy. They don't complain constantly about money. They may talk about systems, goals, or lessons they've learned. but not in a way that draws attention. It's usually calm, thoughtful, and focused on progress. You might even miss it if you're not paying attention, but when you do listen, you'll hear a pattern of responsibility and long-term thinking. They also read, not just to pass time, but to learn, to understand how things work. This might mean reading about finance, psychology, business, or even history. They take in new information, but they don't jump on every piece of advice. They filter what makes sense, test it, and apply what works. This habit of steady learning, even in small doses, helps them avoid mistakes and improve their systems over time. Another habit is how they handle moments of boredom. They don't feel the need to spend money just to fill time. They're comfortable doing simple things. They don't need constant stimulation to feel okay. And that reduces unnecessary spending. It also keeps them grounded. They're not looking for the next big moment to feel satisfied. They're focused on building a life that works, not one that constantly needs escape. They rarely talk about making it. Instead, they focus on progress. They don't compare themselves to everyone around them. They track their own numbers. They measure based on their own goals. That kind of mindset takes pressure off, and that's one of the reasons they tend to keep improving year after year. They aren't driven by urgency. They're guided by direction. Even their reaction to other people's success is different. When someone around them does well, they don't feel the need to compete. They might feel inspired or happy, but they don't let it affect their pace because they've already defined what success looks like for them. It's not about winning in public. It's about getting better in private. One last habit is that they check in with their money regularly. Not every hour, not obsessively, but enough to know where they stand. They're not afraid to open their banking app or look at what they spent last week. They know their numbers, and that simple awareness helps them stay in control. When something changes in their finances, a higher bill, an unexpected cost, they catch it early. They adjust before it becomes a bigger problem. They don't rely on guesswork. They rely on facts. They treat money like something they're managing, not something that just happens. These kinds of habits don't usually get attention. They're quiet, easy to overlook, but they often make the biggest difference because being financially stable isn't always about earning more. Sometimes it's just about having a system that works. And that's the most encouraging part. These habits aren't limited to wealthy people. Anyone can start doing them. You don't need a six-figure income to check your spending or plan your savings. You just need to be consistent. It's not about doing everything perfectly. It's about knowing what matters and paying attention to it often enough that you're never caught off guard. That could mean reviewing your expenses once a week, setting simple monthly goals, or automating part of your savings. These aren't complicated steps, but over time, they keep you ahead. When you look at people who are financially secure, you'll notice it's rarely one big moment that got them there. It's not a lucky break or a huge paycheck. It's a series of small, steady choices that compound over time. Saving a portion of every payment, avoiding lifestyle creep, thinking before committing to a big purchase. These are the behaviors that quietly build long-term financial stability. That's what creates real security. Not just income, but consistency. And the best part is, it's something anyone can work toward. No matter your starting point, the habits are available to you. It just starts with awareness, a plan, and sticking to it longer than most people are willing to.